having an open source data set full of athletes' information would likely lead to further
advances.
Imagine if you're a data science team working for a big club, you're getting paid thousands and thousands of pounds, you've got unlimited resource basically, and there you go, find us in a competitive advantage in our competitors'
You'll find
data.
a lot in the big and
You'll find something.
That's the thing. How much data can you get from athletes? There's not that many athletes, is there?
But then you turn round and there is. When you think about it, how many footballers, rugby players, athletes are in each country? So then one of the questions, like one of the discussion points we wanted to bring up on this was having an open source data set full of athletes' information would likely lead to further advances. Because what it does then as well is it puts it on people's radars. If there's an open source bit of data, what it does is then it allows people to go, well, that's interesting, I'll give that a crack.
Imagine all the specifics as well. If athlete data, say if there was like a clause in any sporting club where they have to share their cardiovascular information, imagine all the specifics you could get from machine learning models, looking at the differences between swimmers and rugby players and footballers.
If you had this massive repository of athletes data, it's anonymised, all the rest of it, right? Once you've got that you can learn a lot. However, there is
what would need to be put in place though to get that data
this is the problem, because
collected properly and ensure everyone's sort of doing the part to give to the database.
So there's that problem as well.
When there's no funding, or you know what I mean.
There's that problem. One of the biggest ones, I think, for me. I mean, I can't find this anyway. I mean, I've seen a couple of articles here and there, but they're on other websites. But just from thinking logically, like, competitive sports are just that. Competitive sports. So any single piece of advantage I can get over another team,
the opposition,
well, it's an advantage, isn't it? It's a competitive advantage.
Yeah, because imagine if we own football clubs and I shared, you were the manager of one, and I give your data analyst all my cardiovascular information from my athletes. He could investigate that, find the weaknesses in the team, find that.
But then you go, right, okay, so we'll anonymise the data. You don't know what data's come from where, the football teams, you don't know who it is. Obviously, that's fully anonymised. However, but is it? Because if we can... So I've thought of a way you could use it potentially. It may not be able to be done. It may be able to be done, but just because you can think of it, it could provide an advantage. So, for example, right, say if you've got this massive repository of football players, so anonymised, totally anonymised. You don't know what players what.
Yeah, right? Going to say, which means, by the way, you have no idea where the data points have sort of come from. Do you?
So then, what you can do, for example, is you could build then a model based on all this open source data to say if an athlete, so say a striker, is 6 foot odd, weighs over a certain amount, and this is his ECG data or whatever, right? This is how, so you get this data, right? Then what you do, you match it to your players, so you'll get a player similar to that repository of data there.
Yeah.
Then what you can do, you can see how tired your player gets, type thing. So you can map it and see if it works with other data. So is it just this player, or is it so you can find trends potentially in athletes. So people with certain ECGs, do they tire in the same way within a certain pool?
And if so, you're saying you could look at your own data, and then you could sort of extrapolate that onto the anonymised data.
So you could say right. So say you're going up against the opposite team, you know your player is using some metric. He's used 40% of his energy or whatever the metric is. But then their opposition striker is a very similar build, and you've shown that people of similar builds have similar tendencies in certain areas, which you can prove. Then you can say, well, he's been playing 30 minutes longer than my player. He's going to be more tired to target that area.
You're saying if you had this big anonymised...
I'm not saying you can do what I'm
saying, a possibility.
it's something you would 100% investigate.
So if you had this big database with all these anonymised football players and you were a data analyst on a team, you could have a look at the trends of strikers at this height with this sort of physiology about them, tire at the 60th minute, and then if you come up against a team with that build of striker, straight away you're thinking...
Because you can correlate it to your own results.
Exactly, so you're thinking straight away at the 60th minute, I know that player will
so you can
die
change
of
the target.
certain metric, and then you can at the 60th minute target that. That's really getting into a detail, but
that's just
these
something...
organisations have the power to do all that.
That's just something I've thought of very quickly. It was a quick rough and ready example. I'm not saying it can be done or can't be done, but imagine if you're a data science team working for a big club, you're getting paid thousands and thousands of pounds, you've got unlimited resource basically, and there you go, find us in a competitive advantage in our competitors' data. You'll find something. And then that's where I think the issue, especially with elite athletes data, comes from is...
You'd never get clubs to agree
like
to
I've got data because of, say, with Dave, he does pre-participate, or he did, I don't know if he still does, pre-participation for athletes and certain things. So we're able to work with that. So the data I've got is going to be private, and again, it will be a problem with my work going forwards. It will be a limitation in certain respects. Obviously, I believe I have the integrity. I will work to the standards that you're supposed to. But just saying, trust me. Yeah. I'm going to do this. Yeah. Well, that doesn't.
And getting back to the competitive stuff, you'd never, if there was, the means to collate this data and have every club agree to sharing it, would they, because of those possibilities of getting a competitive advantage? And then it's not how good's your team, it's how good are your machine learners to find these patterns.
Exactly. So even though the reason for putting the data in there is a proper, true, like...
It's not like a public health scenario.
It's a noble effort. There are ways to... I believe there are ways to... Well, there may be ways to game it, which everyone knows, even regular companies, what they're like with their own data. Yeah. Data is now the power of, like, companies. A lot of their value is data.
Is there no way? Because it's such an interesting way. Like, this is obviously a normal public health problem or whatever. If you're looking into condition, it's like the good of the community to investigate, to find out. But with athletes, you've got this competitive element which may affect, for example, we don't know, like, may affect this data sharing, possibility. Is there no way then to test these models on highly trained amateurs? So like someone who regularly trains and does rugby, but they're not worried about sharing data. Obviously then it's hard to get data collection methods in a local rugby club, because
and then also you've got to make sure your collection methods are wide scale enough so you're getting the proper population.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, if you could sort of get very similar data on highly tuned people, they're just not professionals. Like,
potentially, but then you've got to look into, again, I don't know this answer off the top of my head, you've got to look into, do people who that is their job to train like that, is there something just totally...
Well, I think they would be, wouldn't they?
Potentially, but these are the things you've got to consider. But if there is correlations you can draw, it's potentially an option. But that was one thing that we got from this study, was that the data needs improving to help improve the area.
To help get more clear understanding
in general,
of athletes'